we can just start, right? You want to just do that? Okay. Do you have enough light on her? Yeah,
that's
good.
plenty of light.
All right.
So anyway, I may as well. We have Paola Ferrario with us. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Paola is a, well, I'll say briefly, you are a photographer. I know you're a history buff. I don't know what your credentials are on the history side, but that's partly why we asked you to come here and talk to us.
I was saying just before we started that this is Paola's book. You know, it's 19 pictures, 22 recipes.
It's fantastic.
And it's become my favorite book, and I say that even before the cameras were on. You know, I really love this book.
Thank you.
And it has to do with a voice that when I said it, I said, well, I'll tell you what caught me. When we go through life with a moderate knowledge of many things, we are given talents in few areas. We love specifics. And I went, who writes like this? Who's this smart? Who's capable of talking? But I said, she probably would be great at the war memorial, right? In other words, these are big issues in this space, and people are not lining up to come in. And you have a military history, according to what you were saying. So do you feel comfortable talking about your history or what this means? Because we don't like the fact that this is a lost space and when so many lives were involved.
Yeah, well, you know, in a way, for myself, I don't have a military history, but I come from a military family.
That's what I mean.
So my grandfather fought in World War I and then joined the African campaign.
Wow.
So we weren't politically on the right side of the track either.
Okay.
He was a big monarchist. He wanted Italy to have an empire.
Wow.
And but then with the next generation, my uncles, during World War II, when World War II started, my grandfather was prisoner of war, still from the African campaign, and he was sent to Australia.
Oh.
And I still don't know if he was sent to Australia because the mythology of the family is that he tried to escape.
Oh.
But I'm doing a little research. It could be that he was a war criminal. I don't know. Because to send them all the way to Australia must have done something really bad.
Have you noticed that her mic is under her flap? I just thought, you know, after we heard that speech, that maybe you want to switch sides with her. Right.
There we
a
go.
little delicacy there.
Right.
Thank
you.
Because we want the clarity.
We do.
Yeah.
Not just the content.
But then my two uncles, so his sons, he was still a prisoner when the retreat of the German army was going through southern Italy up to the north with the order to destroy everything. So my family was given 15 minutes to leave their house, and then the house was destroyed because it was a national monument.
Wow.
So it was
your family.
my family house was a replica of the Regal Palace in Caserta. And they were basically, the Germans were instructed to destroy anything nice.
So you could have a whole well of bitterness about the military if you wanted to hang on to it, because they do that even now in different wars. So they're doing it now in the Ukraine. I hate to say it, but that's what they're doing.
And it happened in the Middle East.
Yeah.
But my two uncles, they also, the army had the order to kill all men in military age.
Wow.
So my two older uncles ran, they saved several families in the town, and then they joined the U.S. Army. And they weren't reconnected with the other brother and my grandmother until like about 12 months later in northern Italy. So that's the story about my family came from the south to the north. But actually my uncle Alberto was made a war hero because he saved several families doing that, and then he fought with the U.S. Army.
Wow.
Interesting.
And I've always been fascinated how men of past generation talk about war. Because if I asked my grandfather, I said, what do you remember about the war? And he would say, oh, I got to speak Latin with a British officer. Like, what?
That's kind of random.
Yeah. And if I ask my uncle Alberto, it's like, what was the best thing? And he would say, Chesterfield cigarettes.
Ah, yeah.
So,
Okay,
so
okay.
it was this way where you really didn't talk about the war.
That's right, and that happened in this country as well. Isn't that your experience? They come back and they're not talking about it.
I've heard that, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I haven't had that directly, although my grandfather, who was German, fought in World War II in North Africa, obviously
Yeah.
under Hitler, and he vanished and didn't come back.
But I always loved the discipline of the side of the family.
Right.
And I have been in martial arts for 40 years. So that discipline is really important to me, and counter my father that was brilliant, but had for certain things had no discipline.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
Well, go ahead.
I'm thinking, did we say where we are? We are in the War Memorial in Holyoke, Massachusetts.
Yes.
And this is also a place where I guess it's VFW. I know there's groups that gather here. It used to be also the senior center in the lower level that has now, there's a new facility.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is quite a space.
Yes.
You know, they do have some functions here. They've even had concerts, rock concerts here, and
And it just made it to the National Registry of Historic Places.
it did.
It's
So-
official as
Wow.
of this year, which
Wow.
is nice.
That is very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part of your ensemble, I mean, the history. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? That you sit on the historical commission.
I
Well,
do.
You're actually the
I am the chair.
you're the chair.
And oh, gee, not now. It's gonna get. It's a
Well,
it's a
I mean,
public board.
Yes,
so
no, not. I mean more generically about just your interest in history and architecture. Not specifically.
Yes.
The
Well,
commission.
basically, I'm interested in what people make.
Yes.
I'm not so much interested. I say I'm not so much interested in people, but I am very interested in the result of their thinking, their inventing, their labor.
Yeah.
And what they do with it. And architecture, in a way, for me at this point in my life, is almost more telling, more interesting than art. And I think partially because for something really simple, that it has to follow a function.
Oh.
So it's a balance of creativity and function
Yeah,
that is really interesting to me.
Right. Well, it's very funny that you brought up. I had two things that I wanted to talk about here, and what you just said is right out of the other quote. It says, "If you can't see yourself building your own home, bake a cake."
Yes,
It doesn't mean drop out and watch Netflix. It means do something.
exactly. And there are levels of competency, and there are different gifts.
Of course.
So just find your niche, but yeah, make yourself useful, basically.
So let's talk more about you and your art. How does your love and history of so many things shown here also inform your photography and your cooking at the same time? That's a big question. I know.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because one of the things is I was not raised by my parents. I was raised by my grandparents, and we were both born in the 1800s.
Wow.
Okay.
So I was raised by 19th century people. I think maybe that's
It
also.
shows.
And that's why, because basically, I guess I was born in the 20th century, but the 1800 is my century in so many
that's
ways.
what they call Luddites now. Like the people who wish they were sort of still
Yes.
functioning instead of watching things.
Yeah, but basically, my preserved book is from 1890 something,
Oh yeah.
and partially, there's things like lard, canning,
Yes. Yeah.
that are, again, using animal fat in cooking that people say, no, no. are really important
they
things,
are.
and they come from the past.
That's right.
The other thing is, this is a statement that probably it's untrue and I can't justify, but so much of the building technique of the past, they're so kind of great, and green. And that, I wish we held on to that.
That's true too. That's true too. Well, should we say we did a show at the Mason Lodge,
Yeah.
and that's history, and that's building back when,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
when that sort of thing. But you seem to show some of that in your photography too. You seem very interested in what people have made and what has happened to them.
Yes, because, you know, and what I say always, a lot of my work is about either the triumph or the failure of matter. You
Good
know?
point, yeah. So
It shows here.
It does.
Yeah,
It does
yeah.
actually. And later on, we're going to ask you to pick and curate, you know, a couple of images that we'll add.
Okay.
I love your photography. I think it's
Thank you.
really, really poignant and quirky and charming. There's a lot of humor in it. And yeah, you definitely have an eye, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's speaking from somebody who's good at it himself.
Oh, well,
Yes.
thank you. I appreciate
Yes.
No,
that.
it's true.
Very much so.
So he cares a lot about that. That's why we have 3 cameras and not a day, you know,
But
a
see,
little one.
See, that basically is a quote, you know, if you can't build your house, make a
Yeah.
cake.
Yeah.
I can't buy a, you know, 1920 building and redo it and rent it. So I go around and take pictures pretty much.
Yeah. Well, suppose we talk about Holyoke as this very special place.
Yes.
Have you decided that there's something going on here? Because this and a lot of the places we'll visit is a feature of Holyoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much going on here.
Yeah.
And partially, you know, I think this is, I moved here 15 years ago. And when I moved here, I said in 10 years, everybody is going to want to live here. And I was 5 years wrong. Now everybody wants to live here. I think in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe they're following you.
Yeah, right. Trendsetter,
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
That's
Well,
a nice
those people
thought,
make
but-
big bucks.
Yeah.
No,
But-
really. So, what did you find that was so attractive that you
So-
thought other people were going to?
So, and this is actually to articulate it. I didn't articulate it. A friend of mine did. I think it was Luis Salazar. We were talking,
Yes.
and he said basically, like many other cities in America, Holyoke suffered, you know, the end of the manufacturer era, the loss of job. But contrary to other cities that redid their plan, thought about it, they had the means and reconstruct themselves, Holyoke didn't. So part of it, a lot of the building monuments are left in a time warp.
That's right.
That's interesting.
So
yeah.
there's change.
And so people come here and they say, what is this place?
Right. Exactly.
Then I think what is fascinating, I mean, what is important is that there's everything. There's water. You know, I don't like to live at sea level. I have to be on top of a
Yeah.
hill.
Oh, absolutely.
So be in a dry place. So
Yeah.
that, you know, I think the quality of houses in Holyoke is the best in the valley.
Yeah, I agree.
Good point.
So all of that. But then, you know, I'm just fascinated by all the different ethnic groups and how they live in this city. And sometimes, you know, and I'm active in city politics, and sometimes I see myself almost like the person who goes around with a mirror. Because sometimes I think, you know, I think I see you and I can describe you, but I don't know how aware you are. And I think, you know, there's a population that's been here forever that only sees the historic past
Okay.
and doesn't see the present and its potential.
Yeah.
Right.
But also there's this sense sometimes when I see the action, the decisions that are made, I feel there's almost this sense that if they can't have their city back the way it was, then nobody can have it. And you know, I don't say it's true, but I
Really?
got that sensation.
Wow. No, there's a love of that old thing that.
Yeah.
Well, it was a planned city, wasn't it?
It was a planned city. Well, it was, I mean, in its grandeur, it was. But what has been happening since the 70s, there hasn't been a really good plan. If you see,
Yeah, ironically. Yeah.
Yeah.
if you see at the master plan from the 80s, and that's kind of one big part of my activism, the current plan that is approved, still says that Northampton Road from where Lynch School was to People Bank should become a service road, just like Memorial Drive in Chicopee. And there's people who still want to fulfill that plan,
Wow.
which at this point would be a disaster.
Wow. I was in New York when they decided that they were going to not allow the West Side Highway to happen, and a big trunk right across Lower Manhattan.
Yes.
And it would have destroyed Lower Manhattan.
And-
Just the traffic itself.
Yeah, and I remember it's in the Rise and Fall of Great American City. I forgot her
Oh.
name.
Yeah, I know who you're
Jane
Yeah.
Jacobs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jane
talks
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
about
yeah,
being
yeah.
an activist,
Yes.
stopping the highway.
There's the real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so what about, let's get back to your work. So when say, what are you working on now, or what, how would we understand you better by what you choose to photograph?
Well, actually, one thing that I'll be doing, I have a fictional publishing company, postcard publishing company.
Huh, really?
Yeah, it's called Ferrario International Picture, where I do sets of postcards, sometime in collaboration with artists, and sometime of my work.
Why do you call it fictitious? I mean, what
Because
makes it...
I write in it that I have this printing press, where I produce this card, where instead
Are
I
you looking for a printing press?
No, I just send them out to
Right.
the best lower
Oh,
bidder
yeah.
Right.
and get them printed.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm gonna do a set of postcard of Holyoke modernism.
Yeah, okay,
Uh-huh.
I love that. You mentioned that before. I think that's a fantastic idea.
So
Yeah. Sign me up.
yeah, and I'm starting the project. Probably I have a friend who I talk a lot about my work, and we share a lot of passion of architecture. Is coming Monday. We're doing a little drive around Holyoke, and we're gonna talk what to include.
Wow, that gives me an idea for another show. Maybe we can
Yeah.
collaborate on something like
Yeah.
that.
Well,
I-
maybe she'll come and hang with us on your show, just to make sure we don't.
Yeah, I know. You got to behave. Okay?
I'll try. You're inspiring me. Thank you for all this. So what in your future, when you look at it, for you as an artist, is it more about food or more about your photography? There's something here that strikes me as a balance.
Well, I do, the question is time. Because like one thing I did, I started a food channel during COVID
I thought that
to
would be-
to teach people to do really basic food. It's called Choose a Knife.
Really?
Yeah. And since COVID, then life came back. And I haven't had time to produce my videos
No.
anymore.
So that's
Well-
still up? Is it?
It's still up. I'll send you the
I'll look
link.
for that.
Okay, we'll feature a little. Maybe
Yeah.
A little section.
Because she's suddenly illuminated a weakness of mine, which I don't mind confessing, because I usually worry about picking up a fork.
Yes.
That doesn't, because when you say choose a knife, it does mean something about choose to make something.
Yeah, well, it's actually to me means choose the simplest, more effective tool.
Oh, a knife is.
So a knife, a pen,
Uh-huh.
that's all you need.
When you cook.
But we went through the 80s, so you had to have the bread maker,
Oh, yeah.
the bagel slicer,
Oh, I see.
all those,
I see.
yeah,
Gadgets. Yeah.
gadgets.
So what would be a typical, should we go there? What would be a typical dinner you cooked just recently? that
I
you
know
liked
I've benefited from her cooking, and it's fantastic. I have to say.
when was I, where was I then?
That was before your time, Ed.
God, I knew I was missing it. Okay, what would be a
So one, my wife says that I'm best at cooking meat.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because and I love meat. So
yeah.
but I got my system of braising. Sometimes I braise on the grill, then I put in a pressure cooker for a while. So but lately I did one nice Italian meat. I did this dish that people don't know that much. It's called the naked ones, gli nudi. And they're ravioli without the dough around it.
Oh, interesting.
So you just do
nudies?
Yeah, gli nudi.
So it's like little dumplings.
good.
That little dumpling of ricotta,
Yeah.
egg, and spinach.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of flour to keep them together.
Right.
And then you just put a really simple tomato and basil sauce
When
on
you're
top.
serving that,
Is that in
I'm
your in
right
this
there.
book?
I'm right
No.
there. Right there.
So maybe you should mention that this is actually picture, words, and recipes. And I have this book. It's fantastic.
Don't say it.
Okay. Well, you already mentioned the title, but this is a very nice cookbook. It's a work of art.
Thank you.
And I should pull it out again because I know there's one or two recipes. What's the one that the rice? Is it
The strange rice.
strange rice? Yeah. That of course that clearly when I was looking for a recipe, that's the one that my eye went to.
Yeah.
Very good recipe. Very good book.
Yeah.
But,
she says she sold a bunch of them. She only has a few left.
Yeah.
And she gave me this one. I don't know if I was bribed, but I would have been willing to be.
But you know, and I always go seasonal.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So you know, it's a lot of raw food in the summer,
Yeah.
and very overcooked food in the winter.
Right.
And preserving? Do you like preserving
a
food?
lot,
Same here.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned a lot here. And being in New England, well, I don't know being in New England, but I was inspired by just a lot of the techniques and pickling in particular, but the traditional pickling, fermentation, not just throw a lot of salt and vinegar in, but
Yeah.
yeah, fermentation is really interesting.
And basically, and because you know, I try to go with a farmer almanac,
Oh yeah,
which is helpful.
Sure.
And the moon is getting bigger right now.
interesting.
So
you
I-
find the Farmer's Almanac helpful? I
Very
mean,
much.
I usually, I'm a little,
So
Lost
right
with it.
right now I'm doing some kosher pickle in
Yeah.
salt, and I started a mother for bread,
oh yeah.
and everything is like my kitchen is just bubbling, you know. And but for tomato, when you can them,
Yeah.
it's really the week before the new moon.
Really?
Yeah, and you really because it kills bacteria. Everything
So-
stays low.
Wow. Okay. Well, you've opened my eyes on that. I will. So, for example, I know the Farmer's Almanac tells you when to start things, when to like when to mow your field.
Yeah. And it has all have to do because the moon determines if things grow faster or slower.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
Okay. all
yeah.
right. Wow, we've gone from
Pretty
starting
far.
with military families.
I'm going to try to swing back this way.
Okay.
Just lately, I'm so frustrated with international politics and
Mm-hmm.
problems that I said people should just talk about two things, music and food.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can do that, then they can judge all the other things that come in order to do it well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it seems to me that probably the best way to invade this place, maybe when we get funded and have a huge following, you come back and we have a dinner here that you arrange for the veterans.
That
to
would
say,
be nice.
this-
I'd
wouldn't
love
this
to
be-
do
Wouldn't
that.
this be a great thing?
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also
Well,
because
you're doing it. I'm so
I
inspired.
will do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I will do
That
it.
is an interesting
Yeah.
idea.
Now, I don't know how much it's going to take to do it, but you can imagine. Everybody needs an excuse to come here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It
No,
just
that's a
isn't-
wonderful idea.
It doesn't, and you would be one great excuse.
And actually, Italian food is really good for that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I thought so too. I mean, who's prejudiced against the Italians? Nobody. I mean, not anymore. Let alone
No.
what they make.
It's funny. I was thinking more in terms of budget and
Oh,
and serving a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's true too, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can
That's
make it
true, too.
happen.
Yeah, well, let's make
You're
that
talking
happen.
to some key people, some stakeholders, some
Oh yeah,
pillars,
we're gonna
pillars of society.
We're going to find the right person
Yeah.
to partner that understands that to bring life. Excuse me, I got all choked up over that compliment.
Yeah, I
Was
don't-
there a compliment built into
Of
that?
course.
And what I'm thinking is, we need to find out more about ourselves at the same time
Yeah.
we find out about Holyoke. And
Yeah.
you're a good example of a treasure, frankly.
Thank you.
Well-
And you know, and by the way,
Yeah.
artists now it's a practice in contemporary art. Like Kira Venezia is an artist that is I'm gonna say it Asian. I don't want to mess up the country, but you know, one of his show was about him serving soup, putting
Yeah.
together a little
Exactly.
restaurant and serving soup. So I think even visual artists are going more and more in the ritual of feeding
Yeah.
Interesting.
as
Good-
as
good
as a
point.
artwork, which
Yeah.
is nice.
So just
Yeah.
in case you think it's over with,
Yeah.
I can ruin it and extend it a little bit more. I never understood why a good Italian restaurant couldn't say, today's dinner is this. and then people would come for the one thing that was cooked that day.
Yes.
Instead of having a menu that had to be all cooked that way, that makes you think that it may not all be that good.
Yes.
Have you thought of that? Because that night when we have your cooking here, you know, we'll feature the recipe and the whole thing. You know, doesn't that make
style.
sense about a restaurant?
Oh yeah. And again, about all the bad TV I watch, you know, the cooking show with a chef. They go and save a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
The first thing they always tell them, 3 dishes.
Yeah.
Make the menu
Make it
shorter.
simple.
Why do you have 15 pages
No,
here?
no, absolutely.
No, I agree.
Yeah, they're in bed with publishers. Okay. and cooking.
Yeah.
So we've had a great guest. Why don't we acknowledge our guest? Marianne, I don't know if this will make the show, but I just want you to know
course it
that
will.
you make the show special.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
And other things. In fact, your show's coming.
Yeah.
Thank
Whether you like it or not.
This was so fun.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming.
no,
I
thank you.
really appreciate it, and I think this is going to be really nice. And looking forward to
A dinner.
the big dinner here.
Well, why not?
right.
Why not? Why not? There. Talk about a tease. We just came up with a great one. Now
You-
we have
you
to.
did. It was
we'll
a very
work.
good
We'll
idea.
work on
Yeah.
the next show to make sure there's a built-in tease. We
Okay.
don't know what it is yet. Thank you again,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
thank you,
Great.
by the way, for this personally.
You should have it autographed.
I will. That's
All
part of
right.
the reason I brought it.
Gentlemen, a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thank
Okay.
you, Paola.
You bet.